Welcome to Beyond Boundaries, the podcast that explores bold ideas, big questions, and what happens when we challenge the limit of what's possible. I'm Bob Bachinger.
And I'm Katy Mumaw. We're your hosts, and we're so glad you're here.
Beyond Boundaries is brought to you by TEDx Columbiana, proudly sponsored by Comco Industries, and recorded right here at Bradford Studios.
TEDx Columbiana is a locally organized event inspired by TED's global mission because we believe that ideas change everything.
Each week, we'll bring you conversations with thinkers, creators, and doers, people who are stretching the edge of what's possible.
So lean in, open up, and get ready to go beyond boundaries.
On today's podcast, we are joined by Rick Fryda, President and CEO of the SP Corporation, which is the parent company of Comco Industries. Rick was instrumental in purchasing the theater for us to do our TEDx Columbiana. And welcome to the show, Rick.
Hey, Rick.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
It's an honor to be here.
Great. So Rick and I have the distinction of actually starting at Compco on the very same day in 1980. November 17th, we're coming up on 45 years. It's amazing where we were and where we're at right now.
Yeah. It's a blink of an eye.
It sure is.
When you think about it, you get to this point and you start with some of the older guys that we started with. Bob Bernard, who just passed away.
Right.
Frank Seuss and your dad and your uncles, Pete Carsty, George Benish, and those were the older guys at that point in time, and you kind of looked up to them, and then here you are, you're at the end of your career, and
right.
It's bittersweet.
It is. It is bittersweet, but it's been a fun ride. Learned a lot over the years, and learned a lot of things that we shouldn't do as well as things we should do. I remember walking in the first day. My father was the foreman at the time, and thinking to myself, "Oh my, what did I get myself into?" Punching that time card for the very first time, going down into the locker room to change my clothes, and it was crazy, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I didn't know what to expect. I did not want to work in a steel mill or at Compco, but I didn't think I had a choice at that point in time. My dream was to build homes. I wanted to be a carpenter. I wanted to build homes, but the economy wasn't good back then in 79, 80, and
right.
Even though I tried. So I started to work at Compco, and I still continue to do remodeling and roofing and things like that. But, here I am, 45 years later, I'm extremely blessed.
Yes. And
have been extremely blessed to have had the career that I've had here, to have met the people that I've met here, to be impacted by Mr. Smith, Greg Smith, the Smith family, and everybody that I've been able to meet in the communities
right.
that we've been a part of. So it's been a great ride, and I hope it's not over yet.
Right. So let's talk about how our paths have evolved, and again, you and I have similar paths. I moved into the office as the assistant foreman in 1984, and you actually moved into the machine shop. Give us a little bit of history about how you moved into the machine shop and what transpired in that.
So when this goes back to Bob Carlson, and Bob took a liking to me, and I didn't know that. And back then they would post bids, and the rumor was that they were going to, put somebody in the machine shop, and that was an apprenticeship which everybody wanted to get into. And if you remember the cork board that they used to have down there, they used to post with the push pins things, and they would put up sign up sheets, and somebody would always bring a golf pencil and put it on top of those 2 push pins. So Bob had gone down there and didn't see my name on there, and he came up to me. I was working on one of the jogglers. I think it was 16 joggler that we did stay right, and he said, "Hey, I don't see your name up there." And I said, I'm not going to put my name up there. I didn't put it up there because I didn't think I had a chance at that point in time, because if you remember Jim Ferret, he was telling everybody that he was going to get that job. He was related to Wazzy. He had gone to the apprenticeship school, for a year, and I didn't think it was going to happen. Well, Bob told me, he says, go put your name up there. And I didn't. So that Friday, he went down there and saw that my name hadn't been up there again, and this time I was working on one of the processing presses. I think it was 21 or 22 up at the end of the line there. And he says, "Come with me." Takes me down underneath, where the lunchroom was, and he takes that pencil off the push pins and he hands it to me. He goes, "Put your name up there." And I said, I didn't want to do it. He goes, "Listen," and I told him, I said, "I'm not going to get this job because it's already, He goes, "Listen, they were going to give a math and mechanical aptitude test." He said, "So everybody's in the game." So I took that pencil, I put my name on it, and walked away. So I don't know, a couple weeks later, I think they had a temp agency came in, and we took a mechanical aptitude test and a math test and whatnot. And a couple weeks later, it was on a Friday when they announced who was going to get the job. Okay. And I remember they started taking people upstairs. It was Steve Kokura went upstairs. I think it was Mike Bartel and Walter Benish and Ferret, and I can't remember who else, took the test. And I remember I hadn't gone up yet, and Ferret went up before me. And so he comes down, and you know how he was, he got the job. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll be next because I'm the last person, and Bob's going to take me up there and tell me, "Hey, I'm glad you did this, and you should always put your name up there because it shows that you want to improve." That kind of the talk that he gave me. So I went up, and he's sitting in his office, and back then they smoked up in their office, and he had his hands behind his head kind of like this, and he goes, "Well, you screwed things up." And I was like, didn't know what he meant. And he said, "We have to put 2 people in because of you." So I'd scored the highest on the test, I guess, and that's how I got into the machine shop. Yeah. And I was always thankful, to Bob. Bob was special to me. Yeah.
So what year was that when you actually?
So I think that was 1982, because that was when I got married in 82, and I started my apprenticeship in September. So it was before I had gotten married that I knew that I had gotten into the apprenticeship program. Yeah. But it didn't really start until September, because that's when I started schooling out at the vocational school, and that kind of took a turn, in its own. So I'd gone through the machining portion of it, right. And if you remember, we had Bob Belush was in a machine shop, Bob Skillman, Dave's dad, and Andy Drahushjak, right. Were there.
Was Tom Amicone Ashone
Tom
there?
Ashone was not in there.
He was already retired.
Tom had retired. They would bring him in to
work on presses,
the presses and things like that. And I remember, I knew at some point in time that all those guys were going to leave, right. Especially Andy Drahushjak. Andy Drahushjak was our tool and die maker, and that guy was really, really good. And I thought that guy hated me. Yeah. Hated me. Absolutely hated me. Ferret kind of got away with everything, and it was like you were in school. So when you had to go to the bathroom, I'd go over to Andy and I'd say, "Hey, Andy, I got to go to the bathroom," and Andy would look at his watch and he'd go, "Go ahead." and you'd go down to the bathroom, you'd come back, you'd come around the baskets there, and it was like he always saw you.
Yeah.
And he'd see you coming around the corner, and he'd look at his watch, and he was really tough, extremely tough on me, and I didn't understand it. And back then, one of the things was when a journeyman retired, they wouldn't take their box home, and they were,
Yeah, they'd leave it there.
well, they would sell it or whatnot. And I remember Andy had been retiring or was retiring, and in the meantime, I wanted my tool and die papers.
Right.
So I'm going to go back for a second. I wanted my tool and die makers papers because that's what I wanted. Even though we were a tool and die shop, we weren't certified because we didn't have a certified or a journeyman tool and die maker. So even those guys were really, really good, they didn't have official papers.
Right.
So what I did was I went to class for another year, and then I went and worked for a machine or a tool and die shop for about a year and a half to get my hours in,
Yeah.
And I didn't get them in before Andy had retired. But anyway, so Andy's retired, and he takes me over to his box, and he says to me, he looks at the box, and he says, "Do you want that box?" And I said, "What? I'd like to buy some things from your box. How much do you want for it?" He goes, "I didn't ask you if you wanted to buy it. I asked you if you wanted it." And I said, "Well, I do, but I need to know how much." So he goes, "I want to give it to you." And I remember I looked at him, and I'm thinking, where's this going? This guy, he hates me, And he looked at me and he said, "I was tough on you because I know that you're going to make something of yourself." He said, "I want you to have this box." So I did. So I had 2 toolboxes at my tool bench until the day that I left that machine shop. And when I left that machine shop, Chad Witherstein has that box now.
Still does.
I think he still has that box out there.
That's great.
Out there now. And then Andy had been retired for a while, and I kind of, the leadership journey
Yeah, please.
started
Start into that.
because I had gotten my tool and die makers papers, and I came in and I gave my papers to Bill Heinzelman. And I can't remember I don't think Bob was there. I think Bob may have passed away at this.
Well, when did you become the foreman of the? I guess you would call it the.
So
foreman.
I became the leader. I think it was in 1991.
Yeah, Bob passed, I believe, in '89.
Yeah,
Bob Carlson.
So this was like in 1990 or 91 when I had finally gotten my papers, my tool and die maker papers, and I gave them to Bill, and Bill said, "How'd you do that? We're not an approved shop." And I said, "Well, I went out and I stayed out and got my bookwork done 1 extra year, and then I went and worked for a tool and die shop at nighttime and on weekends to get my hours in, because that's how you got your papers."
Right.
at
You
that
had to
time.
go to a shop that actually.
You had to go to a shop that was certified.
Yes.
That can do tool and die. And he just shook his head and he goes, "Well, that's good."
Was Andy retired?
Andy was retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who was the lead?
No one.
No. Oh, you
There
guys
was
didn't have a
no lead. So we kind of, Andy Mahalik was coming down.
I remember them. Okay.
I remember.
Enough said.
Yeah. But he kind of, and because I worked with Andy a lot, Andy Drahushchak a lot,
Yeah.
I started to put dies together,
Yeah.
And I just, because, Bob Alouche worked on the big lathe. Bob Skillman was on that boring mill. Malarkey was out fixing presses all the time, and Ferret just did whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, I kind of took it upon myself, and I liked it because I was able to learn. Back then we didn't send a whole lot out to heat treat. We had our own heat treat oven in there. So, anyways, long story short, I had kind of been putting some of the dies together at the time, and I can't remember whether it was a week or 2 or a month after I'd given him the papers. Bill Heinzelman, they called me upstairs, and they said, "We're going to make you the lead of the machine shop." And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how I was going to handle it downstairs, because now I'm coming downstairs. I'm the youngest guy in that shop.
Yeah.
I've got Bob Belush that's in his 60s that's been doing this for 40 years. I had Bob Skillman.
Pretty much the same.
Same. And so I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that kind of figuring out how to, at first, you may have leadership abilities, but I don't think that anybody leads from the outset. I think people start to manage first, and then they figure out how to lead.
How to lead. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I think that when, I didn't realize any of these things back then. It's as you get past it and you look back and you think, wow, maybe I should have done this like this. And those are the things that kind of shape how you lead. And I remember a title's never been important to me. I can't remember who said, and I think it might have been Greg had told me this, that he had learned this from somewhere, that and I didn't realize it at that time, but when somebody gives you a title, no matter what it is, lead, president, vice president, that title's good for about 2 weeks, okay? That gives you that somebody's got enough confidence in you to put you in that leadership role, but it's not up to them to become a leader. It's up to you to become a leader. So that title gives you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is, and then that goes away.
Yeah.
So if you continue to use that title, you're a manager. And I joke all the time because, people will introduce me somewhere as the CEO, and I'll say, yeah, that stands for Chief Entertainment Officer. and it does.
Sure.
And when the things that you learn about leadership is I think everybody wants to be a leader or wants to be but what they don't understand is that the higher that you move up, the more responsibilities that you have. You may get some privileges, but the responsibilities outweigh the privileges.
You're absolutely right, Rick. So on this journey that you moved from, obviously, a laborer at the very beginning, and then a machinist, and then now the lead in the machine shop, that period of time goes from what, 1980 to about 2000?
80 to 2003.
Okay.
So
let's talk about how that transferred over to you getting into a management position in the office.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, how did that happen?
So back when Rick Ulam had taken over, what I didn't realize is I think Greg had seen something in me long before I even realized it. Rick Ulam, I've got to thank him for he pushed me, and I learned a lot from Rick Ulam. I learned a lot on what to do, and I learned a lot on what not to do.
Yeah.
I never thought that it would end up the way that it would. Rick wanted to take me out of the machine shop probably in the late 90s, and I just never thought that I could sit behind a desk, and I didn't know what that meant, So in 2003, because I always wanted to make things better, whether it's a process or whatever, and I would always, and sometimes that would screw up. It would be to my detriment, but I think he saw that. So in 2003, I believe it was March, John Boyer came on the scene as a consultant.
Yeah,
because I think we were in somewhat financial straits at that point in time. Didn't know that. Okay, we needed to consolidate. We were in 3 locations. We were in East Palestine, Youngstown, and Columbiana here, where we had bought this building, and it was kind of an incubator at the time. So they put me in product and process development. First day I'm upstairs in the office, I'm sitting next to Larry Blasco. I'm looking down that long hallway and I see some guy coming down that I don't know who it is. And now, even though when I was on the floor, I was in the union, I was only in the union because I had to be. I was not a
Union guy.
I was not a union guy, But now I'm out of the union, okay? And I'm sitting up at this desk and I look down this hallway and this guy's coming down that I have no clue who he is. So I looked over at Larry Blasco because he was in that office there, and I said, Larry, who is that? He said, that's John Boyer. I went, who's John Boyer? He goes, they brought a consultant in. I remember I looked at Larry and I said, well, first day on the job and last day on the job. I said, he's going to cut I'm done. My position's done because that's,
consultants, that's
exactly
what they were supposed to do, come in and look and cut.
So John and I became pretty close because, he taught me a lot. And I became the project manager on bringing East Palestine into Columbiana.
Yeah.
And we put a plan together, John and I. So this is between March and I believe sometime in May, because John was in quite a bit at that time. They knew that they had to do something, and that something was to start consolidating, to cut costs.
Yeah.
So we put this plan together on bringing East Palestine into Columbiana here, and I had it all down on a spreadsheet and what we were going to do, and they were having a board meeting at Tippecanoe. It was on an afternoon. I can't remember. It was a rainy day. It was all I remember. So John Boyer said to me, he said, listen, we might need you to come down and explain this project. He goes, just be ready. I'm like, oh, okay. So they called me around lunchtime and they said, come down, we want you to explain this project to Mr. Smith. So I get down there. Jim Green was in there. I think it was Rob McBride and the people that were Kevin Freeney, I think was still there. And I'm thinking that I'm just going to go down there and they're going to ask me questions or whatever. Oh, no. John Boyer says, get up. So I had to get up in front of Mr. Smith, the entire board, and tell them how we were going to do this move. And we had a chart up, a Gantt chart, Excel spreadsheet on what was going to cost and everything. And I can't remember why I said it or what even brought me to say it, but I remember I looked at Mr. Smith. At the last thing I said to him, I said, Mr. Smith, I'm going to spend this money like it was my own. And the next thing he said was, go ahead, boy, we're going to do this. And I remember looking over at John Boyer, and I think John Boyer will have the same recollection. It was like, we're going to do this. So that project, I think we budgeted at that point in time $1.3 million to make that move from East Palestine to Columbiana. If I'm not mistaken, we did that move. We came under budget. We were at somewhere about $880,000. Was supposed to be done by February of 2004, and we started 35 press, the last press that moved here, the Monday after Thanksgiving. So that move was complete, from about June, my recollection, to the end of October. Yeah. There was a lot of moving parts and a lot of help, but we had that project done. And I think that's what kind of propelled me.
Yes.
And then that October, I was going to quit. I actually came in here to give my 2-week notice on a Friday. I couldn't take it anymore.
Yes.
Was it the people or the atmosphere?
Just some of the things that were going on.
Okay.
Didn't understand. I had been teaching out at the vocational school at this point in time. Mm-hmm. So I made a lot of contacts with a lot of businesses outside, and I had a job. And on a Friday, I came in, and I told Russ, I said, hey, Monday I'm going to come in and give my 2-week notice. He takes me outside, and you're not going to give your 2-week notice. You're not going nowhere. You're not leaving me here by myself. I went, okay. And when I came back on Monday, I didn't give my notice. process.
Yeah. Russ, by the way, Russ was another one of our tenured individuals. He just retired, and he started in 1982. So, I mean, he had 40-some plus years as well.
Yeah.
And he was instrumental out on the shop floor.
Absolutely.
I know Rick and Russ worked together very closely when Rick was the lead in the machine shop and Russ was the foreman in Youngstown. I know they were really tight and got really close, and that's why Russ would probably tell you. He said that, "You're not leaving me."
Yeah, he said, "You're not leaving me here by myself." So I didn't go. And then it was in April of 2004 is when things kind of really took an unexpected turn.
Yes.
So Rob Folsom and I were going to look at an SCS system up in Toledo. It was a steel processing, just a new process. We were going to take a look at it. And before I had left, I did not know there were issues going on with, I don't know,
The current leadership team.
Inside the current leadership,
there
structure.
was. I want to be politically correct.
Yes,
there.
of course.
So there were some things that were going on, inside the current leadership team, which I wasn't a part of. Right. It was okay. But Greg took me out in the back parking lot, and he said, "Rick, if I get rid of this person, will this company survive?" And I said, "Greg, you can get rid of any one or two people, and this company will survive." I think I said they've replaced presidents and popes before. And he said, "That's not what I asked you. If I get rid of this person, will this company survive?" Now I'm thinking there is no good answer for me, okay, at this point in time, because he asked me the second time. And I gave him the same answer. I said, "You can get rid of any one or two people, and this company will survive." And Greg, in that back parking lot, kicked a rock because he was frustrated that I probably didn't give him the answer that he wanted. He goes, "Okay, you can go back to work." And I turned around and I walked in through that back door, and I'm thinking, I'm done. So Rob and I get in the car and we go to Toledo, and we check into the hotel, and I think we did a little bit. We visited a company that was up there. It was about 7:00 at night. We had flip phones at the time, and I get a phone. Rob and I just walked out. It was Hampton Inn. And we walked into the carport. There was a little bar restaurant next to the parking lot, and we were going to go over there and get something to eat. And I get a phone call, and it's from Greg. And so I answered the phone. And he goes, "Hey, are you somewhere you could talk by yourself?" And I said, "Yeah, hold on a second." So I told Rob, I said, "Hold on." And I walked into the parking lot, in the middle of the parking lot, and this was April, so 7:00, I think,
Getting dark.
It wasn't dark, but the parking lights were on. So I'm walking around this thing, and he's talking to me. He says, "When you coming back?" And I said, "I'll be back tomorrow." He goes, "Good." He said, "When you come back tomorrow, I want to talk to you. I want you to run the company." I took my cell phone, and I looked at it, and I put it back up to my ear, and I said, "Greg, this is Rick Fryda." And he said, "I know who this is." He said, "We'll talk tomorrow." And I said, "Okay." So I put my flip phone down, and I walked back over, and Folsom's looking at me like, "What's wrong with you?" And nothing. So we went and ate, and the next day, this is just on my mind. In the meantime, a bunch of things happened here while we were gone. So I get back the next day. Greg brings me back, sits me down. Doug Hagee was here at that time. So it was Mr. Smith, Doug Hagee, and Greg, and he said, "I'd like for you to run this company." And I said, "Well, can I think about that?" And he said, "Well, what's there to think about?" And I said, "Well, it's a pretty big responsibility. I've never done anything like this before. I'd like to go home and talk about it with my wife, because I'm sure I'm going to be spending a lot more time." And I must have been rambling. And Greg said, "Okay, I'm just going to take that as a yes until you tell me no." And I went, thinking to myself, okay, it's time to shut up. So I did. He said, "Come on with me." So he took me down. We were in this office right here where Mark Corman, that's where Greg was at the time. So we go to the other side. If you remember, they had a round table they were kind of having a steering committee meeting at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a steering committee was. And it was Gwen, Rob McBride, Rob Folsom, Jim Green, Gwen were sitting at this table. And we walked down that hallway, and I said to Greg, I said, listen, don't make the announcement until, I know that I want to do this or that I can do this.
Right.
And I said, this way, if I decide that it's not for me or you decide it's not for me, I'm not embarrassed. He goes, okay, fair enough. So we walked in there, and he sits down and he tells everybody at the table, he goes, Rick is now going to be a part of the steering committee. Oh, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. Okay. So I sit down and I don't have nothing. I don't have paper, pencil, pen, nothing. I'm just sitting at this round table. So Greg walks down that hall by where Johnny's office is.
Yeah.
And you could hear him open the door. He stops and he comes back. He stands at that table. He looks at everybody and he goes, by the way, Rick's running the company now.
So much for keeping it hush hush.
And it was probably the longest 15 or 20 seconds in my life. Seemed like an hour. It looked like everybody was stunned, including me. And I remember I looked up and I said, okay, where are we at and what are we doing? So we finished talking about some of the things that were going on. And the guy that had run the company before was kind of after Rob Folsom, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
Trying to get rid of Rob. When that meeting was over, Rob was as white as a sheet of paper, and he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. So we walked down that hallway down by where the exercise room is, and he took me one step out into the shop, and he turns around, and he puts his hands on my shoulders. He goes, are you going to fire me? And I started laughing. And he's looking at me saying, this isn't funny. The more he said that, the more I laughed.
Right.
And I think that I got to the point and I said, Rob, if I fire you, you'll be the first to know.
Yeah.
And then he and I became really good friends. And Rob was really a large part of my success here too. You need somebody in your life, in your career, that's going to tell you the things that nobody else is going to tell you.
Right.
Rob was that person.
Yeah. Yeah, he's still to this day. I mean, he does the same thing with Greg. He did it with Mr. Smith. Yeah,
but
that's
Rob,
just the way he is.
Yeah, Rob was that person.
Yeah.
And I owe a lot to Rob, and I still respect him. Yeah. He comes in here, and it's 99% of the time I've got something else to do, but I do want to make time with him because I owe a lot to Rob.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. And as it went forward from 2004, there was a lot of changes going on. You became the leader. You started putting your DNA on the company, and we flourished. And it was nice to see. You and I always talk about the previous regime. We really didn't have any succession planning. It was just like, here, go do it.
I talk about that all the time. It was like they dumped you off the back of a ship. They threw the life preserver that way, and you were over there, and you had to make a decision whether you wanted to get the life preserver or the ship.
Right.
That's kind of the way that the succession planning was then. I think we're doing it right this time.
We are. I truly believe we are.
I think I hope that we're doing it right. I think we are doing it right, this time. I think God has a plan for everybody. And I think when I was put in that role, he knew that I wasn't bright enough to know a lot of things at that point in time. And what I mean by that, I think maybe God knew that I would always try, but that I wasn't smart enough to know what I didn't know at that point in time. because we were not in good financial shape
No, we were not.
at all. And I was given such an opportunity that for me, failure wasn't an option. Yeah. And I couldn't do it by myself. We had good people around at that time.
Yeah, I think
Bob, Russ, Rob Folsom, and it's always bad when you start naming people because you forget people, but there was a lot of good people that I had around. And people moved into different seats over and over and over until we found that combination that clicked. And I remember when we started to do well, and people would look at me like I was nuts because I wouldn't take my foot off the gas.
right.
But I remember Mr. Smith and Greg saying what Jim Tressel used to say is that you don't rebuild when in the low times, you rebuild in the good times. So I kind of remember that, and that's kind of who I am.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of things have changed, obviously, over the years, the integration of technology, but a lot of things have stayed the same. Some of the things you're describing about the atmosphere of people that really care about this organization and the community and seeing people's success, that part has really stayed the same.
Mr. Smith was really, really big in the community and big on the community.
Right.
Meaning he wanted everybody here to be involved in the community. And that's why I did what I did. And I remember he used to tell me all the time, he'd say, "Boy, I want you to know everybody that works here." And I remember when I was on the floor, there were people here that we thought should have been fired
Right.
long before they either left on their own or they got fired. And when I got up into the leadership role and got to spend time with Mr. Smith, I understood it.
Yeah.
Mr. Smith wasn't a numbers guy in the way that, somebody's going to go to him and say, "Hey, here's where we are financially. I think we need to lay off." No. When he made a commitment, he would tell me he didn't make a commitment to just you. He made a commitment to your spouse and to your kids. And he always told me, when you fire that person, you're firing that family.
Right.
And that's why they put up with what they put up with,
Yeah.
That man was way ahead of his time.
Sure was. Well, my father worked from 1957 to 1998, and I was hired in 1980, and I'm still here. So I have, I think the company is 72 years old right now. And
73. It'll be 73.
Yes. This company has been part of my family for 68 years. That is a testament to Mr. Smith and what he believed in. It's an amazing company, and I feel fortunate to be part of it as well.
Lisa tells me that this is the longest adult relationship that I've had. Is Compco.
Talking about just the investment, obviously that Mr. Smith made in the community, and then that reflects directly on what we've been talking about on the podcast and the opportunity and the service that you've done to the community buying the theater in Columbiana. So tell us a little bit about maybe why we decided, Comco and the leadership team, to buy the theater.
That was something that I think fell into our laps. It was just an opportunity, and I felt that we needed to seize that opportunity. I know that Greg's always had a soft spot for
The arts, theater, yeah,
leadership, TEDx, doing things for the community.
right.
So the theater was John Kufleiner had bought the theater from Don Arthur's, and they were in a transition. And I don't know the whole, all the details, but he was giving the cultural collective an opportunity to buy that theater from him. I'm not sure what Don Arthur spent on that theater, but he did a good job.
He sure did.
He really did a nice job in there. And I think he gave John Kufleitner a pretty good deal just to keep that theater in the community because he didn't want to do it anymore. And then John and Beth, I think, were getting frustrated with some of the things that were going on. So they had a meeting at the Ida Bell Firestone Center, and Rick Noel and Lance Willard had asked me to attend. It was over the theater. So I'm sitting there, and they said that they needed to raise money, and I said, "Well, how much money do you need to raise?" And they said $850,000. I said, "How?" I'm kind of paraphrasing, how much time do we have to raise that? 18 months or something like that. I'm thinking, that ain't never going to happen. So we talked about doing a concert over at Shaker Woods. We talked about doing some events and whatever, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Mr. Smith sat there, and he would tell me all the time, boy, I want you to buy up everything that you can in Columbiana. Do you understand me? And I wish he was alive to see what we bought in Columbiana, because that's what he wanted, okay?
Yes.
And he said that to me before he passed away, and really before we were in good financial shape to be able to do things like that,
Yeah.
okay? So that theater was the first thing that we bought in Columbiana. And if you remember going back when we first started working in the 90s and the early 2000s, Mr. Smith would go out and buy real estate. We had the plaza down in Boardman. They had farmland over on Route 14.
Yeah.
And those are the things that he told me sustained this place, because they were able to sell things off in
2008 and 2009
Exactly.
when we had the
so we were
housing
able
crisis.
to sell some real estate to be able to make sure that this company, survived. I mean, this is
Nobody lost a job.
absolutely. This is the goose that laid the golden egg. So this is what you want to protect is Compco. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, we're not going to, we can't raise $850,000 over, 18 months. And if we did, they were talking about a big concert.
Yeah.
And I remember I told them, if you're going to do this, don't do this yourselves. I want you to call Eric Ryan,
Yes.
Rocco Nolfi, who was doing some stuff for the university at the time. I said, give these guys a call. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you bring a big talent in and have them come to Shaker Woods, where whatever. So we kind of tossed that around a little bit, and then the next meeting I went to, I said, listen, I don't even remember why I said it or what possessed me to do it. I said, you know what? Let's just have Compco buy the theater. And I remember they looked at me and were like, really? I went, yeah. I don't know. I didn't know how we were going to do it, but I knew that we could do it.
Sure.
And John Kufleitner and I sat down and we talked and we came to a deal. One of the stipulations that John Kufleitner had was, no matter who owns that theater, that special needs theater has to stay there.
Yes.
And that's going to happen. That's going to remain. So that's kind of how the theater came about. Who we were going to get to run it, how we were going to get to run it. I didn't think about any of that stuff. I just thought, Lance and I and Rick Noel and Bryce Miner had gotten involved. We talked about keeping that theater here to make sure that it was here for the community.
Right.
And that, again, remember what Mr. Smith was about.
Yes.
Community. Yeah. We need to be good stewards, good neighbors in the community. And I think that if you talk to anybody within the city, Lance, Rick Noel, they do know that we always think about what's best for the city here.
Yeah.
So that's how that theater came about.
Yeah, so even long before the theater even was a twinkle in your eye, you've been supporting TEDx Youngstown, and now the theater is going to be the perfect venue for the very first TEDx Columbiana. Why TEDx? Why has Compco since 2018 been such an integral part of making sure that TEDx Youngstown had a place in our community?
I think that was Greg's brainchild.
Yeah.
And Greg's got a passion for communication and speaking, and more than that, I think Greg has a passion to help other people,
Right.
to bring other people into the spotlight. It's not about him. Okay, he likes to help people, put them in the spotlight, and I think that's what flips his cork, and I think that's what makes him happy. And I think TEDx was that venue. I remember the first TEDx that was down at YSU that I had gone to.
Did you go to the one that he spoke at?
Yeah, it was TEDx Youngstown.
Yeah, it's 2015.
Okay. And then TEDx Youngstown became a part of Compco.
Yes, 2018.
I don't know the years. I know that at one point in time, Greg had talked about giving TEDx to the university.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, 2 years after Greg's the type of guy that likes to bring things in, start something, and then hand it off and let it flourish. And that was the goal. Was he wanted to take it to Youngstown, the Youngstown State University. Let us help them because we were the 2 years we were successful, and he brought in a couple of individuals from YSU and made them co-founders, but
Co-hosts, planning committee.
Yes, and but it just never realized. And then COVID hit. You know, we were shut down for 2 years, and then we went back, and it was just like YSU was. We still have had a couple of individuals that were part of YSU on our team, but it really never materialized.
Is Dr. Pintar speaking this year?
She spoke last year.
Oh, she spoke last year. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you know, 2022, which is the year that Katy and Brad did their talk, and 23 and 24, we were down at YSU, the Black Box Theater. And when I had a discussion with you when you were talking about buying the theater, and you said this would be perfect for bringing TEDx to here now. And yeah, I think that was the turning point in your mind. Is like, yeah, let's bring TEDx down here to Columbiana.
Yeah, I think it's a tribute to Greg to have TEDx here. You know, to bring the people that he brings in from around the world,
Right.
Yeah.
that he's brought in over the years. I think Greg has a vision, and in Greg's mind is always, it's not about Greg, it's about helping other people.
Right.
And you could see that with him.
Yeah.
So I'm ecstatic that it's at the Columbiana Arts Theater. You know, it's a tribute to Greg. I mean, and I'm sure he's proud of what he's done.
Yes.
And the people that he's brought in.
Yeah, we've had over 147 individuals speak in our Red Circle. We've had over 10 million views at TED. TED is the one that actually pushes the videos out onto through YouTube, and we've got over 10 million views with our 147 speakers,
That's
which
awesome.
is awesome. Yeah. And I look forward to. There's going to be some challenges this year with being at the new theater. You know, the last 3 years has been pretty smooth. You know, we learned what we needed to do at the Black Box Theater when we moved in 2022, and it was every year you do it, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be a little bit difficult because it's brand new again. You know, where are we going to put the green room? Where are we going to put all this stuff that the logistics about doing the TED Talk or TEDx Talk in the new theater is going to be new to us. So we're going to have some difficulties, but we'll work through it because we're all experienced at it. So
Yeah, it's exciting because it's like part of the new legacy of TEDx in the Mahoning Valley. Compco has an extremely impressive legacy here. And now, you know, looking at what legacy means to you, and you had mentioned earlier during this discussion, you're getting toward the end of your career. what legacy, what are you looking to leave behind that others can benefit, whether that's, in the work of being a trustee at YSU or in your leadership at Compco, in the community. There's so many things that you've been involved in. When people think of Rick Fryda, what would you want them to think?
Chief Entertainment Officer. Legacy. I don't know that any of us can control what our legacy is. And here's what I mean by that. I've had 66 years old, so I've had 66 years to make mistakes, have controversy, not only in my life and with other people, and to do some good. Okay. So to me, legacy is what others think of you.
Sure.
Okay. I think for me, the legacy is what you do and how you handle yourself after you've made mistakes or have been involved in a controversy. We've all been there. I don't care who you are.
Sure.
We're human, okay? I surely have made my mistakes, in my personal life, in my professional life. To me, it's about how are people going to think of me with what I've done after I've made those mistakes. And I think that's everybody.
Yeah.
I would like to make sure that everybody at this company has the same opportunities that I've had over the past 45 years. That's my goal.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, or however, I need to make that happen. That's what I work towards, because my family and I have had a great, great life because of the Smith family.
Yeah.
So honestly, I don't know what I want my legacy to be. I just want people to think that no matter what, I tried to make a positive difference in anything that I've been involved in, and hopefully I've done and I've learned from my mistakes.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Fail. Not that it was fail, but that fail forward mentality that, it's an opportunity for growth for yourself and to teach others. Yeah. I mean, there's countless times that you've told me a story, not for your benefit necessarily, because it may have exposed something, but for mine, so that others can learn and grow from that transparency.
Like pushing a boulder up a hill with a wet noodle.
Yeah. A few stories that relate to that boulder analogy with that wet noodle, which I've thought about that many, many nights. Is this the wet noodle? And how do I get this noodle to be uncooked again? Because
So right now, we usually go into a question that we'd like to ask you. It's called our launch pad. Mm-hmm. There's 4 questions that we ask all our guests to think about and ask. And let's go.
To the launch pad? Am I up?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So you fill in the blank.
Okay.
A boundary I once believed but now challenge is...
that one person is too few to make a difference. I believe that. But I challenge that now, not because I think that one person could change the world, but it starts with one person. So that one person has to think of an idea or think of something to initiate something or to motivate people to push them to make a change.
Yeah. That's great. I like that. A person, idea, or moment that helped you break through was?
Greg Smith. You know, that that, Greg, this is Rick Fryda moment.
Yes.
And the things that I thought of that night and the next day, you know, I was at a time in my life at that point in time where there was a lot of things that were going on, and you know, this was one person at that moment that I knew trusted me and had confidence in me, and I was not going to let him down.
Yeah.
I was not going to let him down. You know, that's it.
Yeah, it really speaks volumes for the impact that he had and that we can have on other people.
Absolutely.
When we share with them what, you know, we think their potential is, or that we see an opportunity that we know they'll thrive in.
Always be kind to people. Always be nice to people. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And you never know at what point a person is in their life.
Right.
You don't know what they're dealing with. You know, it's easy to, you know, react with a negative response because you get something negative back.
Right.
But you don't know what that person's going through.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of goes along with our next question from
Right.
the launch pad. If someone listening today feels stuck, I'd tell them,
Never give up. Don't ever give up, because it's not just about you. By not giving up, I guarantee you that someone else is going to benefit from your efforts. So don't ever give up.
great.
Super. To me, going beyond boundaries means
Never taking no for an answer. There's always an option. When you take no for an answer, you set a boundary. If you don't take no for an answer, there is no boundary.
yeah. I agree.
It's cool to think about, really. If you want something, never
Never say no.
say no.
Yeah,
Don't take no for an answer.
I learned that in my career here too. There's been plenty of times when, you know, I was part of the IT department here, and I'd walk into a steering team meeting, and Greg or Rick would ask me a question. I said, "Well, no, we can't do that." And it was like Rick pulled me aside after. He said, "Never say no.
Wrong
Never
answer."
ever say no. You always look at it. Come back with some kind of, and he's the epitome of a problem solver, and that's probably why he has been so successful, because he doesn't take no for an answer, and it's always about, okay, how can I solve this problem? And
It's about who you have in your life too. You know, I could have all the ideas in the world, but if I don't have people that could help me, you know, put those ideas or those solutions into motion,
sure,
you know, it's not. So it you know, I think Greg had said it, you know, maybe it was Maxwell that said, you're the sum of the 5 closest people that you have in your life, and it's true. So if you surround yourself with good people, you'll be good. You know, my wife, I never met my father-in-law, and my wife's an amazing person, and I've learned so much from her because some of the adversity that she'd gone through. But surrounding yourself with people,
yes,
she would always tell me that her father used to tell her, if you don't want to smell like garbage, don't hang around the dump. So I use that one.
yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
All the time. And that goes to, you know, you are who you surround yourself with, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, Rick,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for joining us today. We've learned a lot about you and the theater that we're actually moving, and we appreciate you bringing the theater to us for TEDx Columbiana, because this is what we want to try to accomplish. We want to make things for TEDx Columbiana great. We want to be a good partner, a steward to Columbiana, and we believe that bringing things like TEDx Columbiana is key to doing that. And with your leadership, we want to thank you.
I'm truly blessed and honored to have had to sit here and have this conversation, and it's a privilege for me to work with both of you, both Katy and Bob. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Beyond Boundaries, brought to you by TEDx Columbiana and proudly sponsored by Comco Industries.
Today's episode was recorded at Bradford Studios, where ideas come to life with clarity and creativity.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone ready to grow.
And visit us anytime at TEDxColumbiana.com to stay connected with upcoming events, speaker highlights, and new episodes.
We're just getting started. So keep reaching, keep growing, and keep going beyond boundaries.